meeting scheduled for June 24th at 7:11. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Excuse me. Let me get my, yes. Approval of the minutes for April 22nd and the special meeting and public hearing of May 28th. Motion by Mr. O'Brien. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay. I would also, in discussion, I would just like to, if people can, if we can all just refer to April 22nd in item number 4 under the report from the WPCA plant superintendent, the second paragraph, where it starts with Mr. P accepting a motion from Mr. Tiki to authorize a $45,000 transfer from the general fund to the WPCA. I would like to amend that, the word general fund. This was something that we did catch up. It was just a typo. We talked about it that night at length. I do remember the conversation, Mr. Wahlberg and Mr. Casey and John, if you want to say anything on that.
Yeah, and so as we were just talking about, that would be the undesignated fund balance that this would be coming from the WPCA sewer fund.
Okay. And so again, just a typo clarification to amend those minutes from the April 22nd meeting. So I'll entertain that motion for amendment. I'll take any second. As amended. Okay. Any discussion on the amendment? No. Hearing none, so we'll vote on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And then we'll go back to the approval of the minutes as amended. Second, first by Mr. O'Brien, second by Mr. Tiki. Any further discussion on that? No. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. John, town engineer report. Mr. Casey.
So representatives from Ty and Bond are here to give a report on these conclusions or the draft report of the sewer system evaluation survey. So Lori Carrera is here from Ty and Bond.
Has everybody got one? Okay, well, thanks for meeting with us this evening. I'm Lori Carrero. You've seen me before reporting on the status of the project in the past. With me is Dave Sesh, who is one of the project engineers who did the sewer system evaluation survey portion of the work, and Ryan Benoit, who helped us on the hydraulic evaluation with the modeling. What we want to do is give you an update as to where we stand with the project. If you recall, the first phase, the infiltration inflow analysis, was conducted to do metering and identify areas in the town that had areas of high infiltration and areas of high inflow. And what this SSES project did was additional field work to kind of pinpoint specifically where the II was coming from, identify how to remove it, and see if it can be done cost effectively. So I'm giving you the overview. Dave will talk a little bit about all of the field work and our findings, and then I'll wrap it up at the end. So I'll turn it over to Dave.
Thank you, Lori. Good evening, I'm David Sesh. If you will refer to the handouts, I'm going to describe our efforts for the sewer evaluation study. The fieldwork involved 5 separate efforts in order to catalog potential infiltration and inflow sources. These were flow isolation, CCTV inspections, building inspections, manhole inspections, and smoke testing. Flow isolation. Flow isolation selections were made from the areas of high infiltration as identified in the I&I study. Flow isolation is conducted between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. when flows are at their minimum. A weir is inserted in the outlet pipe and used to measure infiltration in each pipe section. Sections that are found to have a net infiltration of greater than 2,000 gallons per day are recommended for CCTV inspection. Of the 246,000 linear feet evaluated, only 6,800 were exceeding the 2,000 gallon per day benchmark, which is a surprise. CCTV inspection. Sections were selected based on the flow isolation results and existing town knowledge of problem areas. Also, previously inspected sections from 2016 were included in our analysis and recommendations. Structural defects were found in most areas inspected and ranged from minor cracks and fractures to broken pipes and dips in grade. Infiltration was found throughout, from leaking joints, cracks, fractures, holes, and broken pipe. Roots and debris are also found in some sections. Building inspections. Streets were selected from areas with high inflow as identified in the I&I study, and these focused mostly on commercial and industrial buildings with flat roofs. Initially, we selected more buildings in the 27 that were inspected, but initial reports showed almost no identified connections. Just one sump pump was identified of those 27 properties inspected. It was decided to refocus the effort on the manhole inspections, which were revealing much infiltration and inflow. Manholes were selected from the areas of high inflow and from observations during the TV inspection efforts. Most of the manholes inspected had signs of infiltration, 369 out of the total of 452 inspected. And many also had vented covers, with 124 of those manholes with vented covers were also in areas of sheet flow or ponding during rain events, and this contributes to inflow into the into the collection system. Excuse me. Smoke testing. Streets were selected from areas of high inflow, similar to the manhole inspections. Smoke testing is used to identify direct connections to the collection system. During this work, 69 inflow sources were identified. Once we completed the field work, we compiled the data and evaluated it to identify defects, recommend repairs, develop costs, and determine cost effectiveness for each repair type. An example of our data evaluation is shown on the bottom of this page. We identify pipe section evaluated, the defects noted, and our recommendations for each one. We also include relevant photos of the defects as well. It is difficult to see on this 8.5 by 11, but we'll provide 11 by 17 in our total report, so those will be able to identify it easier. Recommendations. The recommendations were made to correct the defects identified in our evaluation, and they focused on correcting structural defects and reducing the infiltration and inflow that's entering the collection system. Our cost-effective analysis determined that all repair types, with the exception of replacement of pipes, are cost-effective. And recommend rehabilitation. The types of repairs are listed in this table below, and repair costs total $6.3 million. The map that is attached to the back of this, it's this fold-out map right here, is an example of what we will provide in order to identify the repairs for the specific pipe sections and manholes that we've identified defects and recommended repairs for. The map is color-coded. As you can see, we have a color for each type of defect. Pipe sections that have multiple defects are shown with multiple colors, and the manholes as well are identified. This time, I'd like to turn it over to Lori to discuss the capacity and our next steps. Thank you.
So I have to apologize on that map because we found after we printed it out that the colors for the replacement look almost identical to the colors for the lining. So if you're looking on the electronic version on the computer, it's perfectly red and pink, but it's hard to see here, so I think that's the printer, so I'm sorry about that. One thing I wanted to point out was the recommendations were made based on the findings from our field work, but then we're also making sure that we keep in mind the hydraulic evaluations that we're doing as a result of the sewer model. One of the areas in particular that we're focusing on right now is this gravity sewers downstream of the Broadbridge Avenue pump station discharge. The 10-inch force main goes into an 8-inch gravity sewer that was noted to be surcharging in several manholes this spring. And so we used the model to try to identify if the model showed the surcharging and if it matched what was found in the field. Ryan went out with staff from the plant to identify which specific manholes were surcharging and then replicate that in the model. So it turns out that a lot of the pipe sizes that should be increased, for example, from 8-inch to 12-inch, are pipes that were surprisingly found to contain broken pipes. So we're recommending it to be replaced for two reasons. One, you've got to restore the structural capability of the pipe and also increase capacity. So we're trying to keep both of those things in mind as we develop these recommendations. And, yep.
Thanks for letting me interrupt. Can you just go back to the definition of surcharge?
Surcharge means when you have a 8-inch pipe in the sewer and it goes through a manhole, normally the flow depth's 3 to 4 inches deep going through the manhole, and in some cases the sewer will back up a little bit so that the pipe is almost full, and then the water is coming up above the level of the bench walls within the manholes.
Is that what's occurring? Looking at this page where you use surcharge?
Yes. Yep.
And in the second area where you say optional add-on,
Yep.
they're right in the middle of that pink line,
Mm-hmm.
Town Park, and it floods a lot, but it doesn't smell like sewer. But if it's stormwater problem or just drainage problem,
I think when we evaluated the model in this area, the secondary area that goes down, it ends at a point where the sewer becomes an 18-inch pipe. And I'm looking for Ryan to say, yep, because he did the model work. So that's why he wanted to evaluate it to see if we needed to continue that size increase upstream. How far down did the actual surcharging with the field investigations?
So the pink area, the lower part that you're talking about, that's a 15-inch pipe, and right where that pink stops is when it transitions to 18-inch. So that area is surcharging slightly, so it doesn't come out of the manhole. Surcharging is like it's on its way to overflowing out of the manhole.
so 15 to 18 doesn't sound like that. I mean, it sounds less risky than 8 to 12.
Oh, it's not really risky. I would say it's just providing the amount of capacity that you need to handle the flows. So you want to provide the area of a 15-inch pipe going to an 18-inch, you're pretty significantly increasing the area. And that's what you want. You want more volume for the sewage to travel through.
Mr. Casey, tell me if this is too much of a distraction, but if that area along Bruce Brook, that the stormwater runoff, so it's not sewers, but are there efficiencies for doing those two things at the same time, if an opportunity existed?
I would say that we, in the past, have lined that sewer through Stratford Park and all the way down to Elm Street. So those pipes are new, so we're not taking on infiltration from high groundwater tables that might be caused by flooding or something like that. So I would say that stormwater isn't related to sanitary at that location.
It's just at risk for surcharging because it's a smaller into a larger pipe.
Right.
Okay.
So
Now, I should say upstream of that, we're hoping to take care of some of the inflow, take some of the load off that.
right. Right. So our recommendations, the last page of your handout, it's kind of like, okay, where do you go from here? What are the next steps that you need to take? And, in general, the WPCA should be setting aside money each year to do sewer rehabilitation, sewer replacement work, just as part of routine maintenance to keep your collection system functional. And I'm talking with Mr. Casey, it sounds like that's what you try to do in your budget. You set aside money for lining, you set aside money for replacement, you set aside money to do additional cleaning and TV inspection to find problems in your system. And with these recommendations, you can kind of focus on two things. You can focus on restoring the structural condition of the pipes where they were found to be cracked and broken. And then you also can focus on removing II to help alleviate surcharging in various areas of the system. In terms of where can we find the biggest bang for our buck, right now it looks like the least expensive way is to install. In the middle photo you see these manhole lids, and up above on the upper right is one of your manhole covers. You could see they have 8 holes in the cover, and if you have that in the middle of a road during a rainstorm and the road floods, all that water's coming in. These lids cost $100 to $200 a piece. You put it underneath the cover, and that keeps all of that flow from getting out of your system. That's one of the recommendations on our table. Another flow removal tactic that you could use that would remove flow would be any direct connection that was identified as a result of the smoke testing, like the catch basins in the construction yard in the lower right-hand photo. That would remove a significant amount of flow from your system as well. So I think that would give you a good dollar spent on that. Some of these are on private property, and I think we talked a little bit the last time I was here over whether you have the right to go onto private property or keep everything in the road. Once these are addressed, the next obvious step would be to fix your manholes, because that's where we found a lot of the infiltration coming in.
Lori, just a question for you. On the recommended rehab, the list, high priority replacement at 1.1 million. What's defined as high priority, and do we have a short list of those locations?
High priority replacement was defined as pipes that were structurally in bad condition. So they were cracked, they were broken, they were collapsing. If you look at the cover page in the bottom left corner, that's one of the worst areas. We saw that on the TV tape, and we sent it to Mr. Casey, and I think they're trying to address it this construction season to try to repair it, because that's something, you see the pipe, top half of the pipe coming in, that's something that needs to be addressed as a high priority issue. Low priority issues don't have the structural problems, but they have pipes that could have significant dips in grade. And in those situations, if you've got a pipe where it dips down so the pipe is full at the bottom of the dip, the only way that you can repair that is by replacing it. Lining isn't going to solve the problem. So we put that into the lower priority category.
Thank you. So John, is for those high priority locations that they identified, is that what we're essentially targeting on your short list? What, every year when we put the money into the sewer repairs?
We will. We have
Okay. Of the report. Right. Right.
plug that in. Our current plan has been to try to do work in areas where we're doing
Road work.
above
Right.
it. So we would, taking this for next capital plan, we'll put in a new set of projects.
Okay.
However, there are a couple, like Lori mentioned, that need immediate attention.
Thank you. Any other? Yep. Greg.
Manhole repairs, it's the manhole can you just define a typical manhole repair?
Manhole repair, there's a couple different repairs on where you have infiltration. You have manholes that are made out of brick, or you have manholes that are made out of 3-foot concrete rings, and you can get infiltration coming in at the joint between the concrete rings, or the mortar has fallen away in the brick manholes. So you can seal the inside of the manhole. You can seal the bottom of the manhole and restore the flow channel if the channel has fallen in disrepair and you don't have a good flow coming through. And then also you can have in the chimney area, you can have infiltration coming in the upper part of the manhole. But most of the repairs come some form of sealing the leaks and then coating the inside of the manhole.
Do you guys have an extra copy of this for
Yep.
me? Chairman?
Yes, sir.
The contingencies is about 30% of the total cost.
Yeah.
I want to ask about contingencies, and also if this work was occurring in a roadway, then you're going to have to repair the roadway, and you're going to have to hire police and other overhead. Are those costs of roadway and security included in these estimates?
Yes. Yeah. It doesn't include, for example, if you're replacing the sewer, it would include repairing the pavement over the trench itself. We wouldn't be redoing the whole road. But that's included as part of the replacement cost. The contingencies, I kind of lumped them all together just so this table would fit on one page. But what we normally do is we have the unit price estimates. Then we have a 10 to 15% contingency, just because it's so early in the stage that we haven't done any type of design work right now. And then at the end, you've got to allow some budget for engineering and inspection during construction. So that's what that contingencies represents. I think engineering standard is at this stage, so it's so preliminary, you have a 40% contingency no matter what.
Financial question. I'm not sure who would answer it, but we haven't budgeted or bonded any money for this. Like Mr. Casey's going out for, what do we call the pump station? Yeah, there's a big pump station project. We knew
water
that there'd be
fund.
an outcome from I&I and that it would have a cost. But where you're going out to bonding for the, pump stations, we haven't talked about how to fund this yet.
That's right. We did put in the 5-year capital plan a little money every year, so that's one way to do it, is to fund it ourselves within the current budget scheme that we have and fund it a little bit at a time, do several projects, every year for several years.
That the WPCA budget and the capital funding item that is in that budget would have enough cash to pay for.
Yeah, well, we haven't, it's in the capital plan, that's all I'm saying. We've put it in the capital plan. How we decide to fund it, that'd be just
So we
a
haven't
bigger question for the
we
finance
haven't been
director.
banking money
No.
yet.
I think
No.
if you look at the breakdown, there's some of the things, for example, the manhole inserts. Those, all you have to do is open the manhole, put the dish in, and close the manhole. I mean, that's something theoretically that town staff would be able to do. So that's really not that expensive. We have a line item in the table for areas where when we tried to TV it the first time, they couldn't get through because there was debris in the line, or there was a dip and they couldn't see everything. So there's a line item in there for additional heavy cleaning and re-TV inspection. The town has their own equipment, so they can do that as time permits. So the $6 million isn't something that you have to do all at once. And in fact, a lot of these contracts, when you do it, you would not want to combine sewer replacement with a sewer lining contract and then add on a lateral repair contract. If you keep it within each specific type of rehabilitation, you'll probably end up with lower costs because you don't have subcontractors adding on markups on top of one another. So if you just do, I think as Mr. Casey was suggesting, do a grouping each year and just attack it bit by bit, starting with the worst areas, then you'll make good progress.
So this is the start of our roadmap going forward, John, in terms of the findings. Now we have a map essentially to start working on and basically planning out from a financing standpoint, but from a structural planning standpoint, where do we start?
Correct.
So, and we're not, this is excellent, thank you. I know you guys have been working on this for a while, but this is now we can start planning going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Bill?
Lori, am I reading this correctly? There's a large area here that's actually my district and my neighborhood and Bill's 7th district that looks like no problems. Am I reading that correctly, or were those areas not inspected? It's like this whole area, there's no colors.
I think that might be, it wasn't inspected because you can see right here, this is the boundary of the sub-area.
Oh, that's the boundary of the inspection?
So this area was not.
Was not? Oh, okay.
Those areas might have been inspected. This map is just of one specific area, and there's actually 20 other pictures like that, and each map only shows the one, so you don't have just a wide array of colors. So you might find a page 2 on that would show that specific area, that is not shown on each map.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
This is the full report here.
Oh,
It has all the maps. We just gave one as a sample so you could see.
So if I take
How it was done.
that, book report's due when, next week?
You'd be happy to
Yeah,
summarize
John
it?
has it. You can see it's 3 of, Dave's right, this is 3 of 20.
Oh, okay.
So we just didn't want to kill too many trees bringing
That's
everything here tonight.
actually, Laura, to that point though, how would we be able to, what I'm wondering is maybe for each counselor for their district, maybe get a map of their district, maybe emailed or PDF to each one of us so we can kind of understand better problems in our districts.
Yeah, we could probably email all the maps out.
Yeah, I could
So you
I
could
could
see
email
the
the
big picture.
report, or
If
you
you-
could email the maps.
Actually, if you can email us the entire report,
Yep.
that'd be wonderful. And then if maybe you could separate them out, now that
Well, they're not, yeah.
they're not out, yeah, I know.
So,
The whole report would be great.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Can you email just the maps?
yes.
That would be, if you could email the maps and then email the report separately, that would,
Agreed.
I think, be beneficial.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, yep.
Thank you.
Happy to do that.
Thank you, Lynn.
It's not online, we have it, it's available, we have a PDF on our files. So I don't know if you want that on the town website or not. I don't know if you want to put it online at this
Well,
point.
You know, we could post the draft. I mean, we
Yeah.
would post the final.
Yep.
But we could post the draft. Then you could get it from the website.
I mean, would
Thank
you
you.
like us to do that, or you just want to get an email?
Send us the report first, then.
Okay.
Because again, we're just seeing it tonight, and we'll obviously have further discussions on this.
Okay.
So, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah,
Yes.
a lot of work. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Larry. Did a great job. Mr. Casey, still your time, sir.
So our pump station project has been submitted to the DEP for their review. After they've reviewed it, we'll respond to any comments they have, and then they would give us authorization to proceed to bid the project out. And then when the bids come in, we'll evaluate the budget, and then we would ask you to move forward with that ordinance so that we can apply for the Clean Water Fund loan that would fund that project.
Memo? It's on the back of the agenda. It's double-sided.
Are we on number one, the sewer INI, John?
That's what they just reported on, so number 2 is what I just said about the pump stations.
The pump stations. Did we have any attachments to go along with the pump stations? There was 3 other. But, okay, it's being submitted.
Yeah, we didn't show you,
Yeah.
you know, the design drawings of the pump stations. I actually have a copy here, if after me you want to take a
No,
look at them, but,
No, I
you know,
was-
that's it.
I was trying to mentally compartmentalize each of the projects. So the 6 pump station rehabilitation has been submitted to the state for the money. Okay.
Plans, and then they will authorize us to bid the project. And then when we get the bids back, we'll make sure our budget is where we think it should be, and then we will apply for the Clean Water Fund loan from the state that will fund the project.
Thank you. No more questions?
No problem. Go ahead, Mr. Casey.
I also handed out another supplemental report tonight, and that was regarding our capital funding. And I was putting this together for our item 3 on my first memo, which is the sewer rehabilitation, to look at the funding that's available to us. And I noticed that the funding has not yet been authorized for our sewer projects. And, you know, every year in the capital plan, we put in nearly the same amount of money for projects that we will do on an annual basis. And typically, we put in for miscellaneous repairs and upgrades, some money for pump stations, and we've been putting money in for coastal resiliency, and we've been putting money in for the I&I remediation. So in 2019, those 3 of those projects were on the capital plan, and the budget that was approved that year, we used to have an item for capital outlay contingency, and that item funded these projects. But in 2019, 2020, that line item was not funded. So the intent is to have those projects authorized to come out of the undesignated fund balance. So just like I think Tom had brought in some repairs that asked you for approval that came out of the undesignated fund balance. That's what you just changed the minutes to earlier tonight. The balance of those projects still need to be funded as well. So I've summarized what we intended to fund in the capital plan, and then what's been funded and what we still need to fund those projects. The sewer replacement repair upgrade line item, which we usually put in for $500,000 a year, would fund the sewer rehabilitation program that we are requesting to hire an engineer for, which, as we said, would be focused on those areas where we're doing projects right now, such as Linden Avenue and Main Street. I forget the other ones off the top of my head, but and some of these emergency repairs we actually put on there as well. That picture of that pipe collapse, we put that in the scope for design as well, so we could put a bid together. So I'm looking to have these approved. I don't know if you're ready to do that. I gave this to you at the last minute. But in order to have an engineer engaged to do the design of these projects, we would want the funding to be approved.
Did this go through by Mr. Wahlberg yet?
No, he was not in today, so I was
All right.
going over. I did go over with the assistant finance director.
Okay. Can we hold off on this and basically have him at the next meeting to talk the details through, and then we can discuss it then?
Sure.
Okay. We're not going to jeopardize anything in terms of...
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Greg?
Chairman?
Yeah.
Mr. Casey, there's this document where you're sent, maybe this is what the engineers responded to?
Right. So we had two of those, one from STV and one from Time Bond. That was for the design services for the scope of work that we envisioned prior to tonight.
Envision, does that include?
No, that's what we were talking about before this report. So that's funding projects that are trying to tie together with other capital projects we're working on, such as the West Broad Street replacement program. We have sewer there on Linden Ave that's all that we would want to fix before we do right after we do all the other work, and make sure we're not going to have any problems. That's been kind of how we've been prioritizing our project till now.
Thank you. That's where I was trying to compartmentalize. That's the third category. We're not going to make an action on this tonight, but reading it, for 2019, it's $50,000 plus $4,500. That's, so you have the WPCA Enterprise Fund that has a lot of cash in it.
Right.
But
So let me just clarify what I'm asking. What's bolded is what we're requesting to still be authorized. So that's $245,000 for the miscellaneous sewer, $50,000 for pump station repairs, and $195,500 for the coastal resiliency.
And then there's 3 items for 2020.
Right, which are similar projects, although that also has an item for I&I remediation, which would be this,
Right.
for $200,000. And then
I'm catching
if you
up.
look at the 5-year plan, it increases in what
Right.
we're proposing.
And the 4th item there, coastal resiliency, that's primarily the plant itself?
Yes.
That is that project, that
Yeah.
one project to protect the plant.
So when we get around to voting for this, what I'd like the commission to consider is the revolving sewer fund, that it grows every year as connection fees are deposited. It's probably worth, let's call it $2 million.
Yeah, at least.
That we would draw that down before it's misplaced.
We'll. I want to talk it all through with Greg Sorry, Jay at the next meeting. So we got all the facts in front of us. Absolutely. Any other questions on this item for Mr. Casey's report?
Oh, I just want to ask John about this coastal resiliency. I thought I heard something last week that something good happened that's going to lower flood insurance for our residents. Do you know anything about that?
Well, we've joined the community ratings system, which is a FEMA program where if the town does additional work over and above beyond what the base limit is that FEMA requires, we get rewarded, our residents get rewarded with a discount on their flood insurance rates based on the efforts that the town is putting in going above board with the requirements. So I think we're at 10% discount based on our current classification. So our residents will be paying a 10% discount on their flood insurance for that. It should happen automatically once we're actually approved in the system, in FEMA's system. So I'm not sure if that's been implemented yet, but I know that's where they're ranking us. So you should see it if we are formally in the system. If anybody has flood insurance, you could look at your bill. You should see a 10% discount.
Yeah.
Mr. Casey, do the individuals need to take any action on their own, the residents or the commercial properties?
I don't think so. I think it should just appear on your bill as a resident of the town of Stratford or an owner of the property in the town of Stratford.
As a discount off your regular, is it FEMA?
The FEMA flood insurance. Yep.
And John, that was effective as of when?
I don't know. I can find that.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just finding that out, and if you could shoot an email to each commissioner, council regarding that. That way we can just send that information out to our constituents.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill. Good point. Number 4, Mr. Casey. Oh, I'm sorry, your report. Back to you, sir.
We received this letter requesting sewer extension on California Street. There's one house on California Street north of Barnum Avenue that does not have a sewer because the sewer doesn't go up California Street. It's at Barnum Avenue and it's at Booth behind it, but there's no sewer up the street. So this one house has no sewer. He's on a septic system right now. I know there's ledge in the area, so the septic must not be working very well. So he's requesting that the town install the sewer on California Street up to his property so he could then tie into the public sewer and abandon his septic system. So I just attached some email correspondence and his letter requesting the sewer to be installed. It was unclear exactly who was sending the letter and who was the owner of the property, so they also sent a certificate of incumbency so we could be talking to the proper owner or owner's representative on the property. And in the letter, the resident or the owner is requesting that we put the sewer in, but they understand that a public hearing would be needed for a sewer extension project, and he is looking to waive the requirements for the public hearing since he's the only one on the of the project that would benefit from the project, and he fully supports the project. There's no real need to have a public hearing, and he acknowledges that he would be paying for the costs of the sewer through an assessment that the WPCA would levy upon completion of the project. So normally we'd have a public hearing and then you decide, but he's waiving that requirement because he really wants to move forward with it quickly.
So you're looking for an approval from the board tonight to accept that and move forward with the construction, knowing that the property owner is going to pay the estimated cost that was in the email.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, it's going to be whatever the cost.
Whatever the cost is.
Yeah.
And what's in the interest rate associated to that?
Well, that'll be, you'll set the interest rate. Typically, it's 1% plus what's the town's borrowing rate at the time when we assess it.
Plus 1%, okay. Any questions? Okay, yep.
Can we make it subject that, I'm thinking about validating. Those guys don't listen, they just smile. Ownership of the property, like there may be a co-owner, there may be a bank. Could we make it subject to attorney verification of legal ownership?
Yeah, we did check the deed, and that's why we
Yeah.
got all this other information. But I can have the town attorney look it over.
So approval subject to town attorney
Thank you.
verifying. Okay, I have no problem with that. Anybody else have any thoughts or concerns? Okay, so Greg, if you want to make that motion then?
Motion for approval of 378 California Street to be connected to the public sewer, where homeowner has agreed to pay all costs, currently estimated at $31,000, subject to town attorney validating ownership of the property.
Okay, motion's on the table. Seconded by Mr. O'Brien. Any further discussion on that motion? No, seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Question for Mr. Casey?
Yes.
We had this memo from Ty and Bond.
Yeah, that's similar to the STV one that you also
Okay.
have. So those are the two proposals for the engineering services.
Very good.
So do you need us, are we now holding off on that until we essentially approve or the next meeting, what we just talked about the CIP money?
Well, if you're ready to select somebody, you
'Cause
could do that, and we
Okay.
won't sign a contract till we have the funding.
Okay, because I know you had brought this to us at the last meeting, and then we sent it out so everyone received this a couple weeks ago, all right? Is there any advantage, my only question, Mr. Casey, I know we're within $5,000 of each proposal, of each quote from STV and Ty and Bond. Is there any advantage to
They're 59, 52.
knowing that we've been doing the I&I study with Ty and Bond? Is there any advantage to moving that in terms of,
They know us.
Well, both companies are working for us now. That's why we
Okay.
just solicited from the two. We did not advertise it. So we just solicited from two companies that we knew could do the work and are currently working for us. STV just finished the lining project on the Barnum Avenue, and we extended that to some other areas. So, I think there might be an advantage to having STV only because we already have the specs, everything's all set.
And move.
Have to look at developing the plans.
okay.
I always like to spread the work around personally, so I think it's better to have multiple consultants.
Yep.
I think there's an opportunity for Ty and Bond to do other work that's associated with this, which would be more particular to that project they worked on.
Okay. So would anyone like to make a motion to accept a proposal from one of the two? Mr. Can.
Thank you, Chairman. Proposal for the sanitary sewer repair and lining projects. Recommendation to accept the proposal from STV.
Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Connor. Any further discussion on that proposal? No? Hearing none, I'll call to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye. Thank you all. Mr. Casey, anything further from you, sir?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Hyde, how are you?
Very well. How are you this evening? The monthly report, I've attached the monthly operating report. You'll find that everything is within our standards. We're running very well at this time. During the month of May, our average flow was 10.71 million gallons per day. It's up slightly from April. Water temperature's up 4.6 degrees from April, which puts us at 62 degrees. Our system has come back to life. We're doing very well once again. Nitrogen released during April 2019 met the permit with an average of during April. During May 2019 met permit with an average of 181 pounds per day. Year-to-date average is 345 pounds per day, which last year we spent a year trying to get down beneath permit. We are now beneath permit for the year and running well once again. Plant maintenance. The primary tank number 2 repair is complete. The system is operating properly. The rewiring of mixer number 1 in the anoxic tank number 1 continues. I'm going to talk more about this a little bit when the report's complete. We need some funds for some wiring. We replaced an hour meter on the influent pump 1. We replaced the UPS board in the ultraviolet system. We replaced starter contacts in the wash press, replaced belts on exhaust fans and headworks and blower building, and installed test switches for plant generator and a switch gear at plant, which was goes back to the larger project where we had had that pole blow out and we had to rework the switch gear and we had to order a switch, and it took until this time for that switch to finally come in and be installed, but that is now complete. Pump station maintenance. We've repaired pump motor bracket and replaced capacitors at Oak Ridge. We've replaced block heater power cords at Peck's Mill. We wired a dialer, then replaced the LEDs and 4 float switches at Rachel Lane pump stations. We replaced a motor starter at Breakwater Pump Station and replaced a check valve at Oak Bluff Pump Station. Effluent pump water seal failure, Cascade. The original equipment manufacturer of the effluent pump is evaluating why the seal failure, the cause of the seal failure, and our best method to repair it. We were working on these pumps 2 years ago. This time when it goes together, I want it to be right. There seems to be some concern about the quantity of water that was set up going through the seals. It may have been our error. It's the same as it's been for 10 years, but it didn't keep up with this particular pump. The UV disinfection system. Suez found the 2 towers recently upgraded require a half-day programming upgrade to resolve the data display errors. They're talking about being in this week or next week for that. Additionally, the same 2 towers' cooling systems are overcrowded and require better ventilation. They originally had said the technician was not going to be available till midsummer. Amy from Ty and Bond placed a call upstairs, and we should be getting better results. They wanted to come see us soon. So I appreciate her assistance with that. And we're holding the final payment on that system. Actually, over this weekend, as the heat has gotten here again, we had some issues with that system where it was flashing on and off because it was overheating. We had to open the cabinets to cool it down and so forth. And so we're still working with that. Back to the funding request on the anoxic mixer. It requires new cable be drawn through the conduit to the anoxic tank. It's a set of 4 cables that run through this conduit. Apparently it is set up to where you use a set of cables to control the various parameters of your pumps and mixers. And when one of them starts to short out, what you do is, instead of trying to hunt out that wire, you can't just pull that one through, you go to another set of cables. So it's at the point where we have to replace the 4 sets. It's an $8,500 worth of cables. And I would like to request $8,500 from the capital.
Anybody, any questions or motions for Mr. Hyde? Mr. Kim?
Not a question for Mr. Hyde, per se. Thank you for the detailed report. I was thinking of the maintenance money that we budgeted for 2019 and then 2020, or 2020. Have we been tracking how that has been performing based the actual maintenance expenses versus the budgeted maintenance expenses? Have we done a good job? We did increase it a lot.
Yeah.
2019, rightfully so. It's the end of the year, maybe my question's a little premature.
No, I know what you're saying. I have not had a conversation with Mr. Wahlberg as of yet, to that extent. I don't know if Mr. Hyde has a comment on that.
Well, I'm of the mind that it's somewhat self-monitoring because I have a budget, and each time I take funds out of it, it reduces. So the next time I go looking for funds, they're either there or they're not. This is, if there is a shortage in this case, because we're right at the end of the year, what I'm really doing is looking into next year. And that's when this is actually going to be done. I mean, if I wait till next week to order this, we're in 2020.
I'd like to make a motion to approve $9,500?
$8,500.
To approve $8,500 for the conduit, the wiring, as described by Mr. Hyde.
Any further discussion on that motion? No. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Hyde.
Thank you.
Does that complete your report, sir?
I'm complete.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair. I will entertain that motion, and I need a second for that.
Second.
Mr. O'Brien, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.